Hello everyone, so in this video we're going to be talking about congruency with figures, specifically triangles, but we'll also just pepper in just this idea of a congruent figure. So congruent figures are two figures with the same shape and the same size. Okay, so in this diagram above, okay, if I took triangle ABC and I did a little bit of reflection, a little bit of rotation, I just moved it a little bit, it would lay directly on top of triangle FED, okay? And the corresponding parts in congruent figures are the angles and sides that match up in those congruent figures, okay? So, for example, the two tick marks, side length AB, matches up with the two tick marks, side length DE. Okay? And the order is super important. All right? We can make a congruency statement like in example 1. So if I start looking at example 1, let's write a congruency statement for the triangle. All right? So triangle ABC. I start at A, which is the 90-degree angle. I go out to B, which is the one swoop. And then I go up to C, which is the two swoop. Okay? In my congruency statement, I need to do the same exact thing in the other triangle. So I'm going to start at F. I'm going to go out to G, because that's the one swoop. I'm going to go up to H. All right, so triangle ABC is congruent to triangle FGH. There is no other way to say this congruency statement because everything from triangle ABC needs to correspond or match up to everything in triangle FGH. Your congruency statement tells you everything you need to know about this figure. So like corresponding angles, A, which is the first angle here, has to match up with angle F, which is the first angle in my second figure, which makes sense. Triangle A is 90 degrees, angle A is 90 degrees, angle F is 90 degrees. Those have to match up, all right? Angle B, since it's the second letter in triangle ABC, has to match up with angle G because it's the second letter in FGH. Those both have one angle swoop in the diagram. And then angle C has to match up with angle H for the same reason. Okay, they correspond to the same location in the congruency statement and in the figure, they both have two angle swoops. All right, what about corresponding sides? AB. AB is the first two letters here. So it needs to correspond with the first two letters in triangle FGH. AB has two tick marks. FG has two tick marks. All right, BC matches up with the first two letters, the last two letters, so it needs to correspond to segment GH. All right, and then we have segment CA, which is the third and the first letter, which needs to match up with HF. Okay, notice CA starts at the two angle swoop, goes down the one tick mark, and ends at the 90-degree angle. HF starts the two swoop mark, goes down the one tick mark, ends at the 90-degree angle. All right, the letter order is so important here, guys. So we have to make sure that we follow the congruency statement and we write the congruency statement correctly. Okay? So, use properties of congruent figures. So in this diagram, I'm telling you that this quadrilateral QRST is congruent to WXYZ. This congruency statement right here tells me everything I need to know. All right? So find X and Y. So notice how WX deals with both Y and X. I don't want to have to set up a system if I don't have to. Angle W deals with just X, 5X plus 5. Okay, this angle right here. So I go to my congruency statement and I say, okay, W is the first letter here. Q is its corresponding angle in the second figure. So what has to be the relationship with 5x plus 5 and 65? Well, angle Q is congruent to angle W, which means that their two measures have to equal each other. If they're going to be the exact same, those would have to equal each other. All right, so if I solve this, I'm going to get x to equal 12. All right, which helps me because now I can say that wx is y minus 12. And wx is the first two letters, so that's going to match up with qr. So qr is congruent to wx. So qr is 6. Wx is y minus 12, which means that y is going to equal 18. Okay? So use the congruency statement to match up the corresponding parts. That way you can figure out what do I have to set equal to each other. Okay? Use that congruency statement. Last concept for today is called the third angles theorem. This is looking specifically at triangles. So if you know two angles of a triangle are congruent to two angles of another triangle, the third angles also have to be congruent. All right? So like angle B is congruent to angle E, and angle A is congruent to angle D. Therefore, angle C is congruent to angle F. Okay? And you might have to ask yourself why. Why does this make sense? Well, think back to what we talked about at the beginning of the unit. What do the three angles of a triangle add up to? 180. And so if you're looking at just a triangle, if you know two angles, you can quickly and easily find the third. It's the same idea here. If two angles match up between two triangles, the third angles would also have to match up. Okay? So why is, in example 3, we're going to describe and discover why angles and sides are congruent, which is going to be super important for what we're getting into in future videos. So why is angle SUT, and I like to mark up my diagram, SUT is talking about this angle right here. Why is that congruent to VUW? So this is going to start to combine things that we've talked about in previous units, previous topics. Why are those two angles congruent? What type of angles are those? Well, those are vertical angles, right? If I erase this extra stuff, maybe you can see that better. Those two angles are vertical angles. So why are these two angles congruent? That's because they're vertical angles. And we know vertical angles are congruent. All right? Now, knowing that, why is angle S congruent to angle V? Talking about those two angles. Well, if I look at, I'm going to highlight it. If I look at these two triangles, we were given that angle STU was congruent to angle VWU. Okay, we were given that information. And then in example 3a, we figured out that those two angles were congruent because of vertical angles. So right now, we have two angles congruent. Okay, so why does the third angle S and V, why do those need to be congruent? Well, do you hear how I said it when I asked the question? Why are the third angles congruent? That's because of the third angle theorem. Okay? So that's how we can prove that all the angles in the triangles, in those two triangles, are congruent. We are given one of them. We can use vertical angles to find the second. And because we know two of them match up, the third angles also have to be congruent. All right? And then part C asks, what side do both triangles share? Okay, and in this example, I'm talking about triangle STW, okay, and triangle VWT. Okay, so if I erase this, I'm talking about STW and VWT. What side do both of those triangles share? Hopefully you can see they both share TW. If I draw these separately, which I'm going to say over and over again is super helpful. Okay? They share TW. Okay, they share this line segment TW. What can I say about TW belonging to both of these triangles? I can say that TW is congruent to itself. Okay, so in both of these triangles, they share the side TW. All right, so TW is congruent to itself. This is something called the reflexive property, which is something that's going to be helpful when we get into our next section where we start to prove that triangles are congruent. Okay? So, you want to look for if triangles share a side or an angle, and your reasoning for that is going to be the reflexive property. Okay? So, that's kind of a new idea. The third angle theorem and this reflexive property are new, but it's just going to be important in future videos, in future lessons, and future problems to start figuring out why are angles and sides congruent in order for us to prove that two triangles are congruent. Okay, so this is kind of the precursor to that. All right, so what I want you to work on, I think it's just two problems, yeah. So these two you try now problems, try these out. Okay, we will go over them in class, but make sure you do this and you start practicing your worksheet, your practice problems. Let me know if you have any questions. Have a great day.